What if the secret to joy is hidden in the ruins of a life full of sorrow? Imagine an old man, eyes clouded with memories, his hands trembling as they hold a faded photograph. In the next few moments, you'll discover how the heaviest burdens can become the stepping stones to the deepest happiness and why one simple choice can transform everything. He sits alone on a weathered bench in the park where leaves fall like whispered regrets around him. Once he was known for his fierce ambition, a relentless drive that carved out success but left his heart hollow. His youth was spent chasing promotions and prestige, while the laughter of his children echoed faintly in empty hallways. Each promotion felt like another chain added to the weight he carried until the day a sudden illness took his wife and shattered his world into shards of what if and if only. Grief became his constant companion. Mornings were battles against an ache that gnawed at his chest, nights endless echo chambers of memories too painful to relive yet impossible to forget. A lifetime of regret pressed down on him, the late nights at the office, the missed birthdays, the words left unsaid. He began to believe that joy was a myth reserved for others, something he had forfeited the moment he lost her. One afternoon, a stray dog appeared at his feet, tail wagging in awkward hope. Dirty, thin, and wary, the animal mirrored his own brokenness. Against every instinct he had left, he offered a scrap of his sandwich. The dog devoured it, then looked up with eyes so grateful they pierced straight through his numbness. In that instant, something inside him shifted, a faint spark, as if his heart remembered a capacity for kindness long buried under his sorrow. He named the dog Chance, and each day that followed, Chance coaxed him outside, dragged him into sunshine, and reminded him of the simple pleasure found in companionship. At first, the old man resisted, walking felt like climbing a mountain and laughter felt like a betrayal of his grief. But Chance was patient, persistent. He nudged, he whined, he insisted that life still held moments worth living. Slowly, day by day, the cracks in the old man's armor began to widen. He started noticing how sunlight danced on the pond's surface, how children's laughter in the distance reminded him of his own. Memories of laughter with his wife returned, not as painful ghosts, but as warm glimmers of who he once was. A memory surfaced of dancing in the kitchen, music spilling from scratched records, her hair catching the light as he spun her around. It had been years since he allowed himself to remember joy. He realized he had been protecting himself from pain by shutting out everything else. Yet old habits are hard to break. He found himself waking each morning with the familiar weight in his chest, and for every moment of peace, a wave of guilt crashed over him. How could he find happiness when she was gone? Was he betraying her memory by smiling again? These questions haunted him as fiercely as grief ever did. Then one evening, as he sat on his porch watching Chance chase fireflies, a memory came unbidden. His wife, tears streaming down her face as she confided a secret fear. What if he never found joy again? She had made him a promise that he would live fully, not just survive. She believed his life still held purpose beyond his career and his pain. He realized that by clinging to sorrow, he had betrayed that promise. The next morning, he did something he hadn't dared in years. He picked up the phone and called his daughter. His voice cracked as he said her name, and for a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she did, and the world shifted. They spoke of old memories, of school plays and bedtime stories, of his wife's favorite recipes. He laughed, a real, wholehearted laugh, and felt a warmth bloom in his chest. Over the coming weeks, he made small changes. He volunteered at the local animal shelter where Chance had found him, helping dogs with quiet eyes and wagging tails find homes. Each wag, each nuzzle of hope kindled something inside him, a reminder that broken beginnings can lead to beautiful ends. He joined a book club at the library where he met neighbors who shared stories of loss and renewal, stories that resonated like echoes of his own. He started writing letters to his wife, pages filled with apologies and love, then read them aloud under the moonlight until only silence answered. But healing is never a straight path. Just as he felt momentum, a letter arrived from his estranged son, the one he'd pushed away in pursuit of success. His son's handwriting was unreadable in parts, anger, confusion, longing in each uneven stroke. The letter accused him of choosing work over family, of leaving them alone when his wife died. The words cut deeper than any surgeon's blade, reopening wounds he thought were beginning to heal. He spent nights tossing, battling an inner conflict, the hope he'd nurtured versus the guilt that still shadowed him. He wondered whether he deserved forgiveness, whether happiness was possible for someone who'd hurt the ones he loved most. Chance lay by his side as if offering silent counsel, reminding him that forgiveness often begins with facing the hardest truths. One morning, determined to right past wrongs, he drove to his son's house. The drive felt like traveling through his regrets, each mile a memory replayed, missed soccer games, silent dinners, whispered apologies that never left his lips. When he arrived, his heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear his own breath. His son's door opened a crack, eyes wary, shoulders tense. No words passed at first. Then the old man spoke, voice trembling. "I'm sorry." It was a whisper, a plea, a beginning. The son's face shifted through anger, confusion, pain. Then, slowly, the men embraced, and something inside the old man broke open, not into pieces of sorrow, but into shards of hope. In that embrace, he felt the weight lift, felt forgiveness flow between them like a healing balm. As he walked back to his car, Chance trotted ahead, tail wagging in pure delight. The world seemed brighter, the sky more blue, the air filled with the promise of possibility. He realized that happiness wasn't a destination but a journey woven through acts of courage, moments of kindness, and the willingness to face one's own faults. In the days that followed, he continued to build a life of small joys, morning walks with Chance, laughter-filled calls with his daughter, book discussions that stretched his mind, letters that mended broken bonds. He still felt pangs of grief, some days sharp as knives, but now they existed alongside gratitude. He had learned that joy doesn't erase sorrow, it coexists, each giving depth to the other. And yet the most profound transformation was within his heart. He began to see himself not as a victim of circumstance but as an agent of change. His story, once defined by tragedy, was now being rewritten by acts of love and bravery. He had faced the deepest darkness and, by choosing connection over isolation, had found a light that would never fade. What happened next will surprise you. It's a moment that tests every belief he's formed, a challenge that forces him to decide once and for all what kind of life he wants to lead. But before we reveal that turning point, take a moment to consider your own journey. What regret have you been carrying? What act of courage might ignite the spark of your own happiness? Because sometimes the greatest stories aren't about finding joy, they're about choosing it. A week later, as he sorted through old photographs in the attic, Chance's excited barking pulled him downstairs. In the front yard, a delivery truck idled. The driver handed him a plain brown envelope addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. His heart thudded. He'd learned to brace himself for unexpected pain. Inside, a single sheet of crisp paper bore a letter from his late wife's best friend, Amelia, whom he hadn't spoken to in years. The letter began simply, "I've been keeping something from you, something your wife asked me to deliver only when you were ready." His hands shook as he unfolded the note. Amelia wrote of a box she'd entrusted to her care after his wife died, a box containing letters, journals, even a small velvet pouch of keepsakes. She'd held onto it waiting for the day he rediscovered his will to live. Now she sensed he was ready. The box would be delivered that evening. As dusk fell, the doorbell rang again. He opened the door to find Amelia, older now, her eyes gentle but wary. She handed him the box without a word, then turned and walked away. Alone in his study, he placed the box on the desk and hesitated. Inside, tied with a satin ribbon, were 3 journals in his wife's handwriting. The first, labeled Memories, was filled with anecdotes, simple joys they'd shared, the way the sunrise flickered through their bedroom window, her habit of humming in the garden, the secret nickname she gave him during a stormy night when she was afraid of thunder. The second journal, Dreams, contained her hopes for their family, travels they never took, the recipes she'd wanted to teach their grandchildren, the songs she longed to sing to him when he retired. The third, Promises, was the most startling. A written commitment she'd made to him to love him unconditionally and to believe in his capacity for happiness no matter what trials they faced. Tears blurred his vision as he read. He realized he had never truly known the depth of her love, the fullness of her dreams that included him. He remembered how, at their wedding, she'd whispered, "I choose you every day, through every joy and sorrow." Those words echoed now like a sacred vow, reminding him that their love had never truly ended. In that moment, he made a silent promise to honor her faith in him by living a life she would be proud of. But the journals held another surprise. Tucked in the ribbon was a faded photograph of him and his wife grinning on a distant mountaintop, arms outstretched to the sky. On the back, in her delicate script, were coordinates. Curious, he entered them into his phone, an old cabin deep in the mountains where they had honeymooned. The idea of returning felt both thrilling and terrifying. He hadn't been back since her funeral, too afraid of the memories it would unleash. Yet the promise of revisiting their happiest place beckoned him with a quiet urgency. That night, sleep eluded him. His mind raced with questions. Would the cabin still exist? Could he bear to face the silence there? Would he feel her presence or only the emptiness she left behind? But beneath his fear was a spark of something new, purpose. When dawn broke, he packed a small bag, slipped the journals into his coat pocket, and gently woke Chance. As they drove into the rising sun, the whole world felt pregnant with possibility. The journey through winding roads and ancient forests felt like a pilgrimage. Each mile shed layers of his old life, dead guilt, accumulated regrets, the relentless pursuit of success, and revealed a man emerging, tentative yet determined. Chance pressed his nose against the window, ear tufts ruffling in the breeze as if sensing the importance of their mission. They arrived at the trailhead by midday, the forest canopy arching above like a cathedral. The air was crisp, scented with pine and moss. Every step felt like a step toward redemption. Hours later, they rounded a bend, and there it was, the cabin, weather-beaten but standing firm, its wooden walls glowing warm in the light. He climbed the stone steps and hesitated at the door, brushing dust from the latch. Inside, time had stood still. A layer of dust covered the furniture, but everything was in its place, the worn sofa where they'd shared late-night talks, the kitchen table scarred by spilled coffee and laughter, the old record player perched near the window. He closed his eyes and felt a rush of memories, her laughter echoing off the walls, his hand entwined in hers as they danced to a scratchy jazz record, their whispered dreams filling every corner. He pulled out the memories journal and began to read aloud passages she'd written. Her voice, though absent, felt alive in each word. He read about the first time they saw the cabin together, how she declared it our secret sanctuary. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in fiery hues, he sat on the porch with Chance beside him and wrote his own entry, a letter to his wife, thanking her for guiding him back to himself. But as twilight deepened, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Thunder rumbled and sheets of rain pounded the roof. He watched lightning fork across the sky, fear pricking his skin. The wind howled as if testing his resolve. In that moment, he recognized that life's storms were inevitable, but so was his strength. He closed the door against the tempest and, by the dim light of a lantern, opened the dream's journal. Her words spoke of courage in the face of adversity. He whispered a vow to pursue those dreams for both of them. When the storm passed, he stepped outside into a world washed new. Dew glittered on pine needles and the mountain air tasted of promise. Chance barked at a deer grazing nearby, its watchful eyes reflecting the same wild beauty he felt stirring inside. He realized that this place, frozen in time, was a bridge between his past despair and a future he could still shape. Before leaving the next morning, he tucked the journals into the cabin's mantel, adding a new volume, Renewal, his own account of this pilgrimage and the choices he would make to live fully. He locked the door gently, as if sealing a pact with the past, then turned to find his son waiting at the edge of the clearing, suitcase in hand. His son's eyes shone with unspoken emotion. No words were needed, only tears and the embrace that spoke of forgiveness earned and hope rekindled. Together, they walked back to the car, Chance leading the way. The mountain held their story in its silent strength, a testament to endings that birth beginnings. As they drove home, the old man looked in the rearview mirror and saw not a broken shell, but a man defined by resilience, guided by love, and open to the joy his wife had always believed he deserved. And though the road ahead would have its twists and storms, he knew he would face them not alone, but carrying her love and the promise of each new sunrise. As they rolled down the mountain road, the air between father and son was charged with unspoken understanding. Neither spoke, but the quiet comfort of shared purpose filled the car. Chance rested his head on the old man's lap, his steady breathing a reminder of life's simple constancy. For a moment, the old man allowed himself to imagine a future where mornings began with laughter, not heartache, where regret served as lessons rather than shackles. Back in town, daily routines resumed with new color. The old man rediscovered the joy of conversation, sharing coffee with neighbors who greeted him warmly at the cafe where he once lingered only to drain his thoughts in solitude. His son, tentative at first, found a place beside him, making pancakes at dawn, helping to fill water bowls for Chance's friends at the animal shelter. Working side by side, they built more than trust, they built hope. Yet beneath the surface, an unease stirred. His health, long neglected, reminded him of its fragility one morning when a sharp pain gripped his chest as he climbed the shelter's staircase. He paused midway, hand pressed to his heart, breath coming in ragged bursts. Fear coursed through him, not of death, but of leaving his son and Chance alone again. The memory of losing his wife flared with vivid cruelty. He sank onto the steps, alarmed to feel how easily his body betrayed him. At the doctor's office, the diagnosis was sobering, a heart condition that required immediate treatment. Surgery was risky given his age and weakened state, but without it, the future he'd begun to hope for could slip through his fingers. His son's supportive gaze collided with his own fear. The son he'd spent a lifetime trying to protect would now have to protect him. That night, he lay awake, Chance curled at his feet, and faced an internal battle more daunting than any grief, acceptance of his own vulnerability. He recalled his wife's words from the Promises journal, I choose you through every trial. Was this not another trial he had to embrace? Could he trust that love and hope would carry him through the surgical storm as they carried him through grief? Over the next days, he prepared for the operation. He drafted letters to his daughter, Amelia, even volunteers at the shelter who'd come to depend on his gentle presence. Each word was a bridge. If he didn't return, he wanted them to know the impact she'd had on his life, how every rescued dog, every shared story was a thread of meaning woven into his final tapestry. Yet alongside these farewells, he wrote promises to recover with strength, to continue the life he and his wife had dreamed of, to be there for his son in the years ahead. On the morning of the surgery, as he was wheeled into the operating room, Chance sat beneath the window of his hospital room, paws resting on the ledge, eyes following him with unwavering loyalty. His son stood by his side, voice cracking as he reminded his father of all that lay beyond this moment, grandchildren yet to be born, fireside stories yet to be shared, sunsets to watch together. The old man nodded, squeezed his son's hand, and closed his eyes, not in surrender to fear, but in acceptance of the journey ahead. Time became a blur of bright lights and muffled voices. He drifted between dreams where his wife's laughter echoed in field of daisies and nightmares where he was once again alone on the park bench. Then a steady click, the kind that signals a turning point, and he felt warmth flood back into limbs he feared were gone. When he awoke, first sensation was the rhythmic beep of monitors and the careful hum of nurses. Pain flared, but beneath it, a profound relief. He was alive. His son leaned over, tears glinting at the corners of his eyes, and Chance's excited whimpers filled the room as the nurse lifted him onto the bed. The old man stroked Chance's fur, marveling at the softness under his fingertips, proof that life still held tenderness worth preserving. Recovery was arduous. Each day was a test of will, swallowing pills that tasted of fear, pushing himself to sit up, to walk, to breathe without panic. Yet with every step, he felt his wife's presence in the gentle rustle of leaves outside his window, in the hush of the dawn light. His son became his constant guardian and Chance his compass, guiding him back to purpose with triumphant tail wags each time he managed a new milestone, first steps down the hallway, first hearty meal, first laugh that wasn't strained by pain. As weeks passed, strength returned. He resumed his volunteer work, less physically demanding now, focusing on counseling grieving pet owners and mentoring new volunteers. At the shelter's anniversary gala, he spoke about second chances of lives rescued and hearts renewed. His voice, once hesitant, rang clear with conviction, drawing tears and applause from those who understood the gravity of his journey. At home that evening, he added a new entry to the renewal journal, details of the surgery, the fear, the triumph of waking to a future he'd fought to reach. Beneath his words, he sketched a simple heart, the same heart that had failed him and the one that now beat with newfound gratitude. But just as he believed the hardest trial was behind him, a letter arrived that would test his courage in a way he never expected. It bore the crests of an old publishing house, a manuscript offer for a book about his journey. They wanted him to tell his story. Pride and hesitation warred within him. Could he expose his wounds to the world? Was it vanity, or was it a chance to inspire others? As he held the letter, Chance nudged his hand gently, as if urging him to choose hope over fear once more. The old man looked at his dog and then at the envelope. The decision loomed, to speak his truth and possibly guide others out of their own darkness, or to retreat into privacy, guarding his scars like the treasure they were. The answer would define the next chapter of his life, and the world was waiting to see which path he would take. He sat in the golden glow of the late afternoon, the manuscript offer resting in his palm like a delicate relic. Outside, Chance ambled through the yard, chasing motes of dust that danced in the sunbeams. For a moment, the old man simply watched his dog at play, the simplicity of the scene a balm to his uncertainty. Could he bear to lay bare the raw edges of his soul? Memories flickered, the first time he read his wife's journals by lantern light in that storm-ruined cabin, the tremor in his voice as he told his son, "I'm sorry," the excruciating honesty of his farewell letters. Yet each confession had drawn him closer to redemption. If he published his story, countless others burdened by grief might glimpse their own path to light. He closed his eyes and inhaled the sweet scent of spring blossoms drifting in through the open window. A quiet inner voice, soft but unwavering, urged him forward. Your pain has purpose. He pictured viewers around the world, faceless listeners in darkened rooms, finding solace in his words just as he had found hope in Chance's steadfast companionship. That evening, by the flickering glow of the fireplace, he sat at his old wooden desk and penned his response, yes. He would share his journey, fears and triumphs alike, with the world. He would speak not as a broken man but as one reborn by love, loss, and the courage to keep moving forward. Within weeks, he found himself in a modest publishing office, the hushed hush of typewriters and turning pages framing the gravity of the moment. Across from him sat Emma Carrington, the editor whose eyes shone with genuine compassion. She opened his manuscript, thumbed pages that bore his name, and smiled. This is more than a memoir, she said. It's a lifeline. Back home, life resumed its rhythm, now punctuated by interviews and book signings. He traveled to small towns where he spoke in dimly lit community centers, his voice echoing off peeling paint and rickety chairs. Listeners sat rapt, some with tear-streaked faces, as he recounted the day Chance first appeared at his feet, the journals that reignited his will to live, the frailty and resilience of his own heart. Even so, every mile away from home felt like a plunge back into old uncertainty. At an airport terminal, crowded and buzzing, he wondered if the words would ring hollow beyond the safe walls of his study. But then a young woman approached, her eyes bright yet damp. She pressed a crumpled note into his hand. "Your story saved me." In that instant, he felt the tremor of his own healing echo in hers, proof that vulnerability could indeed be strength. On the final leg of his book tour, he returned to the very park where the story had begun. The bench where he'd sat, eyes clouded with regret, now welcomed him in the warmth of dusk. Children played nearby, joggers traced familiar loops, an elderly couple strolled arm in arm. Chance trotted beside him, head held high. He settled onto the bench and closed his eyes, recalling the moment he'd offered that first scrap of sandwich when the promise of a stray dog had rekindled his capacity for kindness. He placed a hand on the dog's head, feeling the steady vibration of his joyful pant. A voice behind him startled, "Excuse me, sir?" He turned to see a teenage boy clutching a battered journal with pages peeking out. "I started writing here after reading your book. I just wanted to thank you." The boy's words tumbled out in a rush, confessions of loneliness, of dreams he'd abandoned, of a mother who left too soon. The old man listened, heart swelling, as he realized that his purpose extended far beyond personal healing. They spoke until the sky turned indigo, sharing stories beneath the soft glow of street lamps. When at last they parted, the boy pressed the journal into the old man's hands. "I want you to read this," he said. "Maybe you'll think it's worth telling too." As twilight settled, the old man rose, hope's ember glowing within. He patted Chance's flank and slipped the journal into his coat pocket. There would be more stories to tell, more lives to touch. His journey, once defined by tragedy, had become a testament to the power of choice, choosing love over despair, vulnerability over shame, connection over isolation. He looked up at the first stars glittering against the night sky and whispered a thank you to Chance, to his wife's memory, to the son who had walked beside him through every trial. Then he took the boy's battered journal and opened it, ready to discover the next chapter of a story that had no final page, only endless possibilities. Don't forget to subscribe.